Today's podcast takes place in Ukraine this month, March 2022, where I visited a mate, Swampy. I'm not giving away his real name for security reasons. He's the president of a new NGO rescuing orphans from the front lines, providing essential medical equipment and supplies to those trapped in the front lines. He's sharing with us a story. He's been basically fighting alongside the Ukrainians since 2014, off and on. And one of the stories he's going to share with us is from a battle that took place in 2015 against the Russian separatists. The interview is cut short. You will hear air raid sirens in the background, but that's life in Ukraine at the moment. It's very hectic. Continually, people were walking in the room trying to get Swampy's attention to get information and orders of what to do next. But I'm very thankful for the time that we had together for this interview and just hope he stays safe and the rest of the team. I hope you enjoy this podcast. So here we go, mate. Thanks for letting me catch up with you and stay here. It's been awesome. We've been chatting for about 2 years, so it's good to finally meet you.
Yep, agreed. I spent a year in the British Army from 2001 to 2001. Came out with an injury and didn't really do much after that for a while. And then I realised I needed to try and find a bit of purpose again, because I planned to do 22 years in the army, and obviously that didn't come to fruition. So I'd heard about the KNLA in Burma, the Karen National Liberation Army, and something just pricked my interest. I think because my grandfather served in the Second World War in Burma, it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So I started hunting around to see if I could find some contacts. Eventually I found someone but couldn't get in touch with him, a guy called David Everett from your neck of the woods. I think a few people would have heard of David Everett over the years from his escapades, should we say. So I managed to reach out to David's publisher, and after about 2 years of backwards and forwards with emails, he eventually realised I wasn't going to let him go, and he passed on my details to David. And from there, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, really, to be honest.
And did you go to Burma?
Yes. Yeah, so I started going to Burma in about 2008, did a few months, got an understanding of the lay of the land. And once I'd been there once, jungle environment, everything pinged for me. I spent most of my life outdoors anyway, and the way they live out there, with the fact that they pretty much have nothing, all their resources are pretty much coming from the jungle, with the exception of smartphones and flip-flops. But everything else is, if they need to build something, it's built from bamboo, it's built from local produce, all the food's coming off the land. And it just piqued my interest, and I thought, okay, I can really help out here. There's so many things that needed doing. Military bases needed building, guys needed basic firearms training, wells needed building, schools needed building. They needed help to bring not NGOs in, because the issue is the cross-border side of it, because you're in black areas, so legally you shouldn't be there from the Burmese point of view. But the Thais are willing to turn a blind eye, because the more help that you can put in, the less refugees come across the border. So it works both ways, and it's very good. Certainly with the KNLA as well, they are trying their best to stem the flow of narcotics and child trafficking, people trafficking, coming back into Thailand. And because of that, they have quite a good working relationship with the Thailand border guards. So I carried on doing bits and pieces there. So I'd go out for 5-6 months at a time, just piggyback off the Thai visa and jump the border. And then in 2014, late 2013, the protests started off in Maidan, and I was paying a bit of interest to that. Never been to Ukraine before, had no plans to come here at the time. I was just curious, because obviously we'd just had all the uprisings in the Middle East as well, shortly before that. I think it was shortly before that. And for whatever reason, the protests in Kiev just kind of pricked my attention. So I started looking online again, just trying to find someone to speak to on the ground, a Ukrainian that I could get some more information from. Eventually came across a couple of guys. They were filling me in a little bit. But I had a trip booked to Burma from like January in 2014, and that was going to keep me there till at least the middle of August. So I didn't really pay much attention to what was going on completely with Ukraine. So then I jumped on the flight to Burma, ended up doing a landmine clearance project in one of the black areas for 6 months with a British and a Swedish guy. And then when I came out of Burma and got back to Thailand, I started paying attention to my emails and stuff properly, and had a pile of emails and messages from guys back here in Ukraine. They said, it's turned into a war. Can you come and help? I thought, well, what can I actually come and do? And so I flew back home and started looking into it a bit more and spoke to a few friends, and I thought about it, and they said, look, we know you've been clearing landmines. We've got a massive landmine problem here now. There's loads of unexploded ordnance here. Is there anything you can do, even if it's just come to Kiev and teach guys what not to do, without even going to the front, just anything. They were desperate for any help they could get. And my bags were still packed from coming back from Thailand. I thought, well, I've not been home for 6 months anyway, fuck it. There's no need to be home for another 6 months. So I jumped on a flight and got to Kiev.
And when was that?
This was September 2014. And I was trying to find a Ukrainian EOD unit that I could jump on with, anyone that I could volunteer with. And Ukraine has got a civilian EOD organization. No one speaks English. Couldn't even find a way to make contact with them. Tried to find some other groups, was struggling. And with the military, at the time you weren't able to sign on with the Ukrainian military because they didn't have the legislation in place. But there was a number of volunteer battalions that were working at the time. So I had a look through the volunteer battalions, and you had some issues with a number of those battalions, but it was the only way that you were able to kind of get to the front and actively get involved to train people. Because the problem was, because the war was picking up and picking up and picking up, people weren't staying in Kiev. They were literally joining on with a unit, and 2 weeks later they were on the front line with little or no experience of anything. So I thought, well, if I go for a few months, I can see what the lay of the land is, see how I can help, how I can work, and take it from there. So I ended up into a unit that got amalgamated into the National Guard, and was with a foreigner unit, mixed foreigner unit within their overall battalion. And I stayed that first trip from September 2014 till I think April 2015. Because of the uptick in the war and the situation, we all just had to get our hands dirty. We all had to get on combat operations because they needed as many people to shore up the front line as we could. So I would spend about 30% of my time actively working within a reconnaissance unit and doing their EOD and explosive work for them. 30% of the time was probably spent clearing munitions, clearing mines, clearing whatever I could, and then the last 30 would be either downtime or training guys on base. And that's pretty much how we rolled for that period.
And in that 30% where you're out in recon, did you get into contact?
Most of the contacts were in trenches. It wasn't, the whole point was going out to do recon missions was to not get contacted. If we were getting contacted, we weren't doing our job properly. So it was more to go out and try and find enemy positions, find out where the separatists were digging in, find out where the hardware was. Sometimes that would be successful, sometimes it wouldn't be. But a lot of it, by that point, the Ukrainians dug in very quickly. And where we were around the Mariupol sector, there wasn't too much push and take within that area. But at the start of 2015, because of what was happening at Donetsk airport, it was decided to try and make a bit of a push in the south to take a bit of weight off what was happening further north. That got a response. It was kind of the response that we expected. But at the time we had no tank support, we had no artillery support. It was units with small arms, some heavier weapons, but not, we didn't have access to 120 mil, 150 mil artillery or anything like that.
I guess the
No.
Russians did, or separatists did.
The Separatists did, yeah. The Separatists had access to quite a number of tanks and things. Because of the units from the Ukrainian military that had sided with the Separatists, they had taken all their equipment with them. Plus, a lot of the hardware was in the east of the country anyway. And that was just a knock-on effect from when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So Ukraine was stockpiled by the Soviet Union as being the battleground for World War III, which is pretty much the situation we're in now. So you had massive arms depots that for years had stood idle with no one on them, no one protecting them. I've been taken a number of times to go and have a look at a couple of these places when we've been out going up to meet other units, and you'd walk into a field, literally a field, and it would just be boxes stacked as far as you can see in places.
That's insane.
Yeah, this is why they have big issues over here with arms depot explosions, even previously before the war, because you've got crates and crates and crates of munitions stacked up, and eventually sunlight, rain, everything else, it all leads to one thing and then another. So this is why you have these arms depots blowing up, even when
They're not being hit.
no, it wasn't being hit, it wasn't sabotage. From what I'm told in the past, and there's no reason to disbelieve it, is also the old Soviet mentality of if you're not being paid enough, if you make something at work, you steal one every day, and you put that in your pocket and you sell it at the market. And you would have the problems of people stealing munitions, stealing weapons and everything else. And once that gets to a certain point, someone's going to find out. But if a small arms depot blows up, there's no evidence. There's no paperwork trail anymore. It's all gone. So, and it sounds crazy, and I would like to think it was untrue, but I've heard it come from so many sources now. There's no reason to disbelieve it. So yeah, it's a bit insane.
Yeah.
A bit insane.
And so after that deployment, did you come back?
I came back home for a while. I needed a break. We'd had quite a rough time in February 2015 down in Shirokina, down on the coast there. There's a couple of instances down there that made me question what I was doing a little bit.
Can you mention one?
We got overran on February 14th, Valentine's Day, in 2015, and my translator shouted at me to run in Russian. The problem was I couldn't hear it for the sheer weight of fire that was coming in. And we'd been doing back-to-back operations for like 3 days before, so we were all tired. Certainly myself and one of the other guys I was with had had barely any sleep. And we got hit about 7 o'clock in the morning. I was in the most forward position in this village towards Sahanka, which was controlled by the enemy. And about 7 o'clock in the morning, they hit us with grad, 2 salvos of grad along the front line there. And the Ukrainians that were on those positions, all small arms. I think one guy had an RPG and 1 round for it, and that was it. There was no ability to stop any mechanicals coming in. And started to hear tracks. Okay, where's that? And there's a main MSR with a tree line on both sides running down to the left hand side of us. And kept hearing this noise. Kept hearing it and knew straight away it's a tank. It's definitely a tank coming. And we tried to get on the radio and get some more support up. That support didn't come in time, and out of nowhere this tank burst through the tree line, probably about 70 meters away from our position. Didn't open up with the main gun, and we believe from after looking at everything that happened that day, we don't think either they had a mechanical failure with it or they didn't have ammunition for it, but they used that to drive us out. They used that as a driving wedge.
But they had machine guns, the machine they used.
Oh yeah. The everything else that they had, they hammered us with. So we were taking 82 and 120 millimeter mortars incoming, a lot of weight of fire, a lot of 7.62, a lot of 50. There was definitely 23 getting thrown at us as well, and just the sheer weight of fire, there was nothing we could do. And someone made the announcement to retreat. Someone gave that order to retreat. It wasn't done in a manner that was either professional or useful, everyone just scattered. And myself,
with their weapons, I'm assuming.
yeah. Some of the weapons were left. So I had a 308 sniper rifle with me, bolt action, Thurman Brugger. My AK was in the basement along with my day sack, night vision, and a thermal camera. Because of the sheer weight of fire coming in, I couldn't even get back to that building to get in the basement to get it. So I'm just left with a 308 rifle in a street firefight, which wasn't really helpful.
Do you have a sidearm?
Makarov. So yeah, I had a hammer,
Yeah.
hammer in a holster, and that was it. And I had the rounds that were in the mag for the 308, and 2 mags for the pistol, and a couple of F1 grenades, and that was me. And so we started to pull back a little bit, and we ducked past the next row of houses, and we'd gone in the back garden. There was like a 5-foot high corrugated fence, almost like the fibre board. Fibre concrete board as opposed to metal. So the boys started trying to smash a hole through to get that, but no one's paying attention around the corner, like the way the enemy are coming. Everyone had just lost it at this point. It was just rabbits. They just wanted to get out of there. So I'm popping my head around the corner, just trying to keep some kind of cover for them. Looking around, and I can hear the tanks getting closer. The volume of fire is just outrageous at this point. There's so much fire going down. And Mayak, which was our main logistics hub, about a mile behind us, they'd started throwing heavier stuff back towards us. So we're kind of in the crossfire of it now. And the boys managed to smash a hole through. And I'm watching, looking. Okay, 1 guy's going, 2 guys, and there was about 7 or 8 of us. It was myself and two of my guys, an older guy and my translator, and then there was maybe 4 or 5 Ukrainians that were mixed Ukrainian military police that were there. I keep looking behind me and make sure they're gone, and then I hear shouting. I can hear the separatists or the Russians, whoever it was, shouting at this point. I'm like, right, okay, they're really close at this point. I can hear them over the fire, and you could start to feel the ground. Like, I knew this tank was close. I just couldn't see because I'm looking between the slit of 2 buildings next to each other, and I've just got that small field of view. And so my concentration now is just looking through that slit between the buildings, watching, because the road's like 8 meters away from us, 9 meters away from us, and there was only 2 ways this tank was going. It was either going to come down the street next to us, or it was going to run parallel along the top. Either way, we were in a really bad position for it. I look around the corner again. I see a couple of guys run past, straight down the street. I'm like, oh shit. I turn around and look behind me. There is no one behind me. What the fuck? I'm slightly crouched down, and I stand up so I can see over the fence. And as I look over the fence, so behind that fence is a field that's maybe 150 meters across, square. And I see the back end of my translator almost across the field. And he was the last guy. And I'm like, fuck, I'm on my own here. And as I turn my head back around to look through the slit again, just the start of the T-64 comes past. And I'm like, I'm fucked. Because I can't fight it. I know there's guys on the other side of the building. And if I start to run across that field now, this tank is just going to go another 5 or 6 meters past this building, and then it's got a clear line of view straight down. Yeah. So I froze because I didn't expect to have been in that position at any point, not without a stick of guys behind me with a plan. And that was the start of a very long day.
So what happened?
You don't have enough camera time for this. I pretty much hunkered down for a couple of minutes where I was, and just I backed off the corner of the building back into the garden, and obviously all the grass and everything had grown up quite high in the garden. So I brought myself back and hunkered down a bit. Got the rifle out of sight because the rifle was black. It was a Ukrainian police rifle. Very obvious as Ukrainian. The separatists were running around with Dragunovs. Waited, and after about 20 minutes, like they'd all pushed through. Like this first wave of separatists had kind of almost pushed through at this point because they were just trying to drive us back into the village. They were trying to get a foothold into the village so their troops had some cover because they'd been assaulting via the tree line and across the field. And at the corner of my eye, I see this guy in a black plate carrier, a Ukrainian, probably about 5 foot nothing, but 5 foot wide as well, literally throw himself over a back fence further down the street to my right. And then I see this taller, lanky, skinny guy, another black plate carrier, do the same, and I realised straight away that they're running away. They are not. They're not the separatists. They're Ukrainians, and they literally jumped over, fell over, and there was like a big pile of leaves that had been raked up at some point, and they literally practically buried themselves into it. I thought, fuck, I need to go to them. And I thought, right, okay, how am I going to get to them? And there's still people laying down. And look behind me, and I can just kind of see the separatists had already moved down the street behind me to that side. The tank I hadn't even paid attention to at this point because they had just carried on going down the street firing at the guys that had already left. And I made the decision, right, I need to get to them. I'm going to have to come back out the way we came in, nip around. There was like a retaining wall with a small fence on top of it, but I'd have to skip around that, come back into the next garden, and then I could cleanly get to them. And I managed to get one of the guys' attention. He realised straight away, obviously, because we still had our yellow flashes on. Like we were covered in tape back then in 2013. So he's kind of like slowly waving at me, and I ran to the corner of the wall where I'd initially been. Had the rifle kind of up and ready, but not. Looked around the corner. There's another guy moving further down. Right, wait. And it was like, do I go, do I stay, do I go, do I stay? And I made the decision, and I kind of pulled myself back from the corner and just keep ducking my head around. And it was like, do I go, do I stay, do I go, do I stay? And I made the decision to go, and as I made the decision to go around the corner, I came around the fucking corner, and a guy walks right around the other side of the fucking corner.
How far distance?
4-5 meters, and I just leveled the gun at him and pulled the trigger. I didn't aim it, there was nothing tactical about it, it wasn't some high speed low drag thing. I literally just leveled it at him mid chest and pulled the trigger, and he just went down. And I didn't stop at that point. I literally come round, pulled it, and started running because there was nothing I could do. Like, my hands were shaking, I was shaking. In my mind, there was no time to start racking the bolt, messing around or anything. He went down, and as soon as he started to go, I just started running because all I wanted to do was get to those two guys.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do. And I hoped and prayed. I half expected as I was running across to them, I had maybe 40 meters to get to them, and I was expecting to get shot from the left. I was expecting to get shot in the back from the guy because as I'm running, like in the back of my mind, it's like, did he just duck? Did he drop? Like, did he instinctively fall? Did he trip on something? I can't have hit him. Did I actually pull the trigger? You know, and these things are just going through my head, and the overall thing of it was fear. There was nothing brave about it. It was just, I need to get to those two guys because I'm absolutely alone at this point with a fucking bolt action 308. It's useless. It's not useless. It's a great rifle, but I love that rifle. But in that situation, it was the worst thing I had. And I made it to the guys and got in, and I felt really bad after a couple of seconds because I literally got in. They were lay. One guy was lay facing back towards our guys. The other guy was lay facing towards the fence that they jumped over. And I pretty much jumped in like a bloody puppy and wiggled my way in between them. And it was fear, and I'm thinking, they've got the AKs, they can protect me at this point, like I don't want to be, if I just hide between their two bodies, there's enough of them to take any blow from anyone. And it took a couple of minutes to snap out of it. We realised, look, they didn't speak English. I didn't speak Russian, I didn't speak Ukrainian.
But was there an understanding? You look at him and saying, you fuckers, you left me behind?
These weren't my guys.
No, okay.
So these weren't even my guys. My guys are gone. I mean, these were two guys. I never got to the bottom of it, but I believe that they had been resting when the first hit came through, or they'd they'd gone into a basement or a cellar when the grad had come in, and they'd stayed down there. And because with a lot of those basements and stuff, they're quite deep, and obviously you've got complete ground coverage on them. So sometimes you can go in a basement here and you won't hear small arms. You just won't hear it. So I wonder if they'd actually gone in, or they'd been asleep, and the shelling had come in from the grad, and then they'd come out and realise no one was fucking here. Because
when you shot that guy, was the shooting going on? Would the other separatists have heard that shot, or was there so much chaos?
No, it was carnage. Like the sheer volume of fire at that point was horrendous. I'd already got tinnitus from I've got tinnitus anyway before even coming here, but my ears had been ringing before we'd even got out from the shelling, because the garage, we didn't have a basement in the house where we were at, but we had like a garage, but it was kind of like a big basement with a sloping garage floor coming back up to street level, and so I was pretty much deaf anyway at that point, so it didn't really make a difference.
Did you have ear protection?
I did have ear protection. It was clipped to me at the time. So it was just one of those things I didn't have time to even think about it. It was just it happened so quickly, from going from the point of the tank bursting to the tank being on us, less than 5 minutes. It was really quick. They really pushed hard to get into us. From the after action reports from people that we'd spoken to that day, other guys from my main unit, who were further down the front line on this village, because you've got Shirokina, so the village is just like a rectangle with the seaside on one side, so you're kind of compressed and contained into it. So as everyone came down, there was other units that got stuck behind as well, but in groups. And I mean, I did the same thing with these other two. We ripped all our flashes off, we ripped our patches off, things like my pistol, because I had
because you had Ukraine.
Yeah, things like having a pistol holster on the side. I took the pistol out, chucked it into my vest, and got rid of the holster.
Isn't that also a bit of a danger, because then the Ukrainians could mistake you for a separatist?
Oh yeah, we did. We got shot at later in the day by an SPG for that exact reason. And it was one of them. But the problem was, it got to the stage where, in at least 2 instances during that day, we walked with the separatist advance because we had no choice.
Oh, you did?
Well, their front line had already come through us.
Yeah, so you acted as a separatist saving you.
We had no choice, because we had the first wave of infantry and a couple of their fighting vehicles and their T-64, or T-64, whatever it is, T-64. I'm not a tanky.
A tank.
They pushed through. That first initial wave was just to try and push it, but they had a second wave that came in, and they were doing the door-to-door.
Yeah.
These were the people going into the basements, chucking hand grenades and stuff. So we got trapped between those 2 waves. The first wave wasn't a problem, because they rushed through so quickly. They didn't check everywhere, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But after I'd lay with these guys for a couple of minutes, and we're like, right, we need to get patches off, we need to sort ourselves out. We start hearing the next lot coming through, and we think, whether it's the second wave or whether it's just the fat ones that didn't want to come as quick, don't know. But you could hear them kicking doors, screaming, shouting. So you had that volley of fire because the sound kind of moves with it, if that makes sense. So the first chaos of them pushing through had kind of come past us now, and was maybe 100, 150 meters to walk back towards our friendly positions. And the second wave starts pushing through, and they were a lot more methodical. It was very slow. They were coming in to do any mop up, and that was when we realised we had a real big problem, because we had this massive field backing onto us. We couldn't really go to the right, because we'd have had to have carried on along this road for at least a couple 100 meters. So the only way would be to go almost back to where I'd been, but stay on the inside of the field side of the fence.
So were you seen by the separatists? You would have.
Oh yeah.
So they just assumed you were part of the crew.
So we managed to go for maybe the first 150 meters round, and the tall guy with me spoke Russian. No, that's not right. Sorry. The short fat one spoke Russian. The tall guy only spoke Ukrainian. And they kind of they were looking at me, and they were just pointing at things like, to lose this, and I did, because they were in like black Kevlar body armors with plates. You know, they, apart from their uniform, which was just ragtag anyway, they didn't have any helmets. They had a couple of mags each. They both had a grenade each, and that was it. I had a lot more kit than they did, so we just started ditching bits I didn't need. Get all the patches off. Anything that I could literally dump was gone. My headphones, I stashed them. I looked for them a few years later when we finally got the village back, but they weren't there. Highly annoying. And I ended up having to carry this rifle here. I didn't want to ditch it.
No.
I wasn't ditching it and just having a Makarov. But there was no other thing. I couldn't just walk around and carry it. So I'd have the taller guy, sorry, the other guy that spoke Russian on my right, the taller guy on my left, but we kept fairly close together. And they made it look like we were actually part of the separatist forces moving forward. And I've got the rifle held here, knowing that I can't let it be seen because it just sticks out like a sore thumb. And there was a couple of times when someone would shout over and the guy would just turn around and shout something back and point a direction, and that was it. And we just pushed through the forces. And as soon as we could get into reasonable cover in a garden, we'd just get in. Fucking hell, that was lucky kind of thing. And the only communication between us was me speaking English at them and them speaking Ukrainian at me. But we all knew what we were thinking. It was just a subconscious thing at this point. It was like, we knew we were in the shit. And it was just like, we just need to get out of this as fast as possible. But obviously the second wave's still coming behind us. So we're kind of somewhere in the middle of the two, but we're closer to the second wave. And we jumped into a back garden and there was a civilian there just watching, just seeing what's going on. You know, this is interesting, you know, going on in my back garden, all these people pushing through, tanks going off and stuff. And I hunkered down with the Ukrainian guy, and the guy that spoke Russian went down the path, said something to the guy went back in his house, and he went down and popped his head over the fence at the front gate, and immediately someone started talking to him. So he had a conversation with them, and then he backed up a little bit, so like he was against a wall and he's just going like this with his hand, like, okay, shit. So we got into the grass and you could get into the next door neighbour's garden, so we snuck around the side of the neighbour's garden quickly, and he, whatever conversation he'd had, he hurried back up and was just, we need to go this way quickly kind of thing. So we moved into the next garden, and then we're in a position like, okay, we've got nowhere else to go now. There's high fences with spikes on, there's no way we're getting over them, and there was a road running parallel again to the main forces lines, and we had no choice. It was like we needed to get across this road, but on the other side again it was high fences, you couldn't just get yourself over. And we made the decision, kind of, there was a bit of a push from one of them to get me on the street because I'd had enough at this point. I just wanted to hide in a cellar for the rest of the day and work out if I was going to shoot myself or blow myself up with a grenade, because there was no way I was going to let myself get captured, because I'd been called out in the media the previous month because of the Mariupol incident. And so we kind of pushed ourselves onto the street, and there's a pile of separatists walking down the road behind us. There's a pile in the distance further up the road. So we got onto the road in between these groups, we moved up, and the first opening that was in on the right hand side, there was kind of like a little white house, little one-story white house, overgrown garden, and there was a track alleyway running around the left hand side of it. So we dived into there, and as soon as we got into that garden, there was a pile of 82mm mortars came in from our guys, and that was the best thing that happened all day, I think, because that scattered everyone on the street. That gave us a chance to just run down the hill as fast as we can. And about halfway across Shirokna, there's like a raised mound that cuts the village in half, and it's got an MSR that runs across the top, and there's like 3 big drainage culverts. Like, right, okay, straight into the drainage culvert. Forget about tripwires and booby traps. We didn't care at this point, just straight into one of these culverts, out and through to the other side. Got through to the other side, and you've got like a bit of a valley, and it's just an open expanse, there's no cover, nothing. Like, oh, this isn't great. You know, we've probably got like 300 meters in front of us, but it's just no cover at all. And we looked to the right, and there was kind of like a raised burn. Okay, we'll get up there. Up to this raised burn we go, and the back end of it was open, but then it was enclosed with this burn on 3 sides, and I don't know, it was almost like someone had had it for the farming or for having pigs in there or something like that, but it was a bank as opposed to being a hedge or a fence or anything. We got in there, and there's a massive weight of fire going into where we had just come from, not the culvert but the house behind it. So we were very lucky that we had literally just got through when we had. And we got into this culvert and like, okay, got into this kind of like burn area and crawl up onto the bank, and we can see Mayak, which is, it's an old school building, which we had as the main fob back behind us. And whether they knew it was my fob or not, I don't know, but I knew, like, oh great, I know where my guys are now. One of us stuck our heads up too much in this grass, and within 30 seconds there was 8 or 9 SPG rounds came in. Most of them hit the bank in front of us. One of them skipped through the top of the bank, came over and exploded behind us. Again, completely deaf again. Nothing, not a scratch. I don't know how. So we were there hiding behind this hedge for a while. Then there's a drone. Like, okay, well, we don't know whose drone that is. It was just a hobby drone, kind of like one of the medium-sized white ones that were running around for a while. And we're like, what the hell do we do? And thankfully, because of the position we put ourselves in, there was no separatists kind of coming up behind us. We didn't think. The smaller Ukrainian that spoke Russian decided that he was going to crawl back up and have a look over the other hedge to the right hand side, and now this was the direction facing away from the sea up towards the main MSR. And he crawled up, and as soon as he got to the top, he just put his hands down like that and started talking straight away. I'm like, oh fuck, what's going on here now? So pistol back out, staring up at this hedge. The guy that's with me has got his AK trained up at the top of the hedge, and this Russian's just speaking in Russian, blah 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 blah. He wasn't shouting, he was talking. I'm like, fuck, they're literally on the other side of the hedge. And unbeknown to us, and I've only got this from speaking to friends after all this had happened, and a couple of them I met up with a few years after, because I just didn't see them after all this, and they hadn't actually opened up on us with the SPG. There was an armoured vehicle right on the other side of this burn. We didn't even know it was there. And
Ukrainian?
Russian.
Russian.
Well, separatist, Russian, whatever. There was Chechens in the village that day as well. Another unit of ours ran into a group of Chechens after they pulled their things off. And the Chechens turned around to him and said, "Where's the enemy?" And my friends went, "That way." And off the Chechens went, and my friends were like, "Okay, we need to go that way now." It was just insane. I mean, it was absolutely insane.
So who was he talking to? Who was the Russian?
He went with them.
Oh, and left you guys?
He went with them and left over those guys. He knew.
Because you guys didn't speak Russian?
We didn't speak Russian. Yeah. And I didn't speak Russian or Ukrainian. He knew if he left us, if he tried to get us to go, we'd all be dead.
Yeah.
He disappeared. Now it's me and this other guy, and we're like, oh. And I'm just thinking, fucking hell, like, just do yourself now. Save yourself the hassle. Save yourself the rest of the stress for however long it's going to last. Just do yourself now and be done with it. And the guy that was with the taller guy, we waited about 40 minutes, and there was kind of like, on the inside of this burn, there was almost like a drainage ditch, and it was just wide enough to kind of like shrug yourself in with your shoulders in. We did that, and another drone came over us a little bit later on, and I'm pretty sure it was actually the drone from our side. So we thought, right, we need to move. And he snuck up to the burn and just had a quick look. Whoever was there, they'd gone, including our guy. And he had looked around, and there was a house maybe 50, 60 meters away. Excuse me. And we made the decision we're going to crawl. We'll just crawl the entire way and we'll get there. So we had another good look around. We got over the burn and we just crawled through the grass. And the grass was about that high, so it was slow, but it was, there was so much going on in the And he had said to me, "Oh, sleep," and I'm like, "I'm not fucking sleeping, man." You know, I was
Yeah, so
late.
you guys found somewhere to go.
So I'm just like staring at the window. Sorry, is that running now?
Yeah, it's
All right, okay.
But that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
so you found somewhere
So we'd found somewhere to get
You
into.
had no comms?
I had no comms, so we'd had a look around for a radio. We found some stale biscuits and a bit of stagnant water in a bucket, and literally that's everything we'd had. I mean, we had no water, we had no food, or anything else like that. Very dehydrated, obviously, from the morning's chaos. And eventually, he had taken a nap. I'd covered for him. Then I took a nap, slept longer than I thought, and at some point he just shook my shoulder, and I'm asleep on the sofa facing the window. So thankfully didn't shoot him waking me up. But what I did do is I'd totally forgotten that when I'd fallen asleep I'd lay the 2 extra pistol mags that I had on my stomach, well, on top of my gear, and when I sat up I must have knocked them onto the sofa because I realised after I got out of the building, after we snuck out of the building, didn't have them, so I just had one mag in the pistol now. But it was deadly quiet, there was nothing, and I checked my watch, it was about 1:15 in the morning. What we ended up doing was very, very quietly, just nice and slowly, just walked, using the buildings, using the hedges for cover. We got up to the main MSR, and it was so quiet, I thought, fucking hell, all my mates are dead, like, you know, they must have pushed all the way through. You know, fucking hell, are they into Mariupol right now? Should we even be going this way? And you just start having these crazy thoughts, so you kick them out of the way. And we walked parallel to the MSR back towards the Ukrainian lines, and then there was a tunnel that went underneath to cross to the other side of the MSR. So we took that tunnel, and that led us into a field, and I knew where we were now because that field led us up to where the Ukrainian trench lines were, kind of like parallel to where my main base was. I'd been into those trench lines, and we started walking up, and the guy's like this to me, like, you know, we've made it, and I'm like, he's still walking along with his AK. I'm like, just put your gun down, you know, put your gun on your back or something. They're gonna shoot us walking up here. I'd already slung my rifle, put my pistol away, and I'm just walking like that with my hands out. I thought, if someone sees us with thermal or thing, at least if I'm like that, they might think I'm someone surrendering or something. And we got about 100 meters up this field, and all we hear is stoy. And the guy in front of me, just very calmly, was like, Kransky, near Ruski, and blah 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 blah. And then they're obviously not believing him, like, no, stoy, Ruski. And he turned around, and I'll never forget it, he goes, Angliski, Swampy. And all I hear from about 20 meters away, Swampy. I'm like, oh, thank fuck for that. Oh my god. So they got us in pretty quickly, chucked us into a trench. We ran through the first line of trenches, back to the second parallel line of trenches in the rear, and they had one big dugout, and we got outside. There was some bottles of water on the side. It was freezing cold at this point. All the bottles of water were frozen, so I'm like, oh, I'm trying to find some water, like dying. Someone give me a cigarette quick. And they led me inside into this trench, into what they would call a blindash, into this underground bunker. And there was I'll never forget the look on their faces. There was about 25 guys in there, and they'd been getting shelled all day, and you could just see it, like, you know, they were trying to make the most of it, but most of them were white guys just staring at their feet. The kids, this was the thing, you know, this is why everything went wrong, because 80% of them, they were just young lads. They'd never experienced anything like that. I'd never experienced anything like that. And I feel this punch on my leg, and I turn around, and fuck me, it's the Russian speaker.
Ah, he made it.
He made it.
Yeah, awesome.
He made it, and I'm somewhere, because I've misplaced it, it's either in my boat or in my van, I still have the hat that he gave me, because I was freezing, like I had no hat, nothing like that, and he's looking at me and he just gave me my hat, and I gave him a patch. And there was a photo taken of him, me and the other guy the next morning, but I never got access to that picture. And it's them, more than anything else, it's those two guys is the reason why I keep coming back here, because they could have ditched me at any point, and they didn't. They both put their lives out for me. And
have you seen him since?
No. No idea. I don't know if it's still alive, don't know if we're in anything.
Any idea who took that picture?
It was taken on a phone for one of them, but how there was no proper exchange of details or anything like that, and I was in a rush to try and get back to my guys as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that is one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons why I continue to keep coming back over the years, because without sounding like a bitch, I guess, I came here to help Ukraine as much as I could, and I still to this day will try to help Ukraine as much as I can. But the kindness that those two guys showed me when they could have saved their lives a lot easier was, that will never leave me.
Yeah.
How do you repay something like that?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know where they are. I don't know who their families are. If I knew, I'd make sure that their families were well looked after, and their children, anything else. But I don't. So this is the best I can do in return.
Yeah.
I think so.
And mate, I know you're really busy. You've got a lot of people who want to see you right now. But I fucking love to have a really good chat about your experiences, maybe another time.
Yeah.
But mate, what you're doing now is really important. Could you give me a really brief rundown of what you guys are doing here now?
Okay, so really briefly, so myself and a number of friends that were working in the background as kind of like admin to help me get support and donations for Ukraine. We ended up linking up with another organisation called HARP. They're a rescue organisation, humanitarian rescue organisation, and they're here in Ukraine to try to get orphans and refugees moved from the more critical areas of Ukraine back to safer regions like Lviv. And what's happened off the top of this is myself and my friends have got together to create a humanitarian organisation as well, and to work in conjunction with that. So we are still trying to get operations set up properly right now. Obviously there's legal binding paperwork because you're dealing with children, you're moving children around and stuff, so obviously we need to make sure that that's all ironed out and everything's above board. And on top of that, what we're trying to do is bring in donations of civilian equipment, medical supplies, clothing, blankets, toiletries, whatever we can get our hands on really. And then when we send vehicles out, either to go to take a look at places where we might be taking refugees or orphans from, what we're doing is we're loading them with supplies, taking them down, giving them to civilians or the hospitals, the field hospitals, and then with the military donations that we get as well, things like body armor, plate carriers, helmets, we're just dumping that off to Ukrainian forces on the front as we see fit. So.
And how are you getting your donations? How can people donate for you?
We have a donations link set up on the page. I can get that link passed on to you, or people can contact me directly. A lot of people have contacted me because of my Instagram presence, and we've got a supply network set up which we can help get people onto to be able to get stuff coming in from Europe. We can take stuff from anywhere in the world. Obviously for someone sending something, it needs to be cost effective for them as well, because if it's a couple of tourniquets, there's no point posting them from Australia. For instance, it's easier for us to be able to buy that here, or certainly buy it in Europe. But larger bulk donations, we can help with the shipping and everything else to get that into the country.
And so you recently set up, but have you been on any rescue missions so far?
No, so the organisation we're working with, they've already been doing rescue missions. For our side, we're just trying to iron out the last bits and pieces. We've got a distinct lack of vehicles right now, which is hampering efforts. And because of the few vehicles that we do have, we've also got to make sure that the supplies that are coming in from Poland are constantly moved, because otherwise what we're doing is we're blocking up space in other warehouses for donations to come in. So we're just trying to iron out a few bits right now, but I would hope that within the next 7 to 10 days we can start moving forward with a number of other issues there.
Cool.